Good evening, Dr. Ozem. My name is Ella, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. We'll be starting really soon once more people join in the call. We look forward to having you today. Thank you very much for agreeing to speak at our event. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to have every one of us here again. You're all welcome to day two of the Limitless Medicine webinar. I am once again your moderator, Etu Zezi Manuela, Regional Assistant for NIMSAS Kusibi South South region, and it is my pleasure to moderate for this event. We'll be starting right away. We'll be starting right away. Our speaker is already here. So, once again, before we start, I want to see the MSAs that are represented here. So, if you are present, please you can give a brief introduction with your name and your MSA. I can see someone here that I recognize from the NCBA. I think from University of Uyo, Mary. Mary, you're welcome. Glad to see you here again in the Limitless Medicine webinar. So please, let's have a quick round of introductions. Name and your MSA. Okay, I can see Favor. Favor was here yesterday. Favor, you're welcome. Cecilia Ubom, you are welcome. Okay, you didn't indicate your MSA, but I'm guessing that you are from your name that you're from University of Uyo. Yeah, thank you so much. I guessed correctly. Oh, and we also have okay, most people here are people that were here yesterday, and so glad to see you here. Okay, we also have Ekeoma. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Emmanuel from ABSU. That should be Abia State University, if I am if I'm accurate, if I'm guessing correctly. Abia State University. Am I right? Yes. Our sessions are recorded. I will send the yeah, someone just asked if our sessions are recorded. Yes, they are recorded. You can rewatch them on YouTube again after now. So I would send across the link to the group chat once the session is over. Okay, so today, which is day two, I'm sure we all are aware of the modules that we will be discussing today. Today we'll be diving into research medicine and public health medicine, or public health medicine and research medicine. Yes. Okay. Research medicine, many of us do not really have. Also speaking on my behalf, I do not have a lot of knowledge. Oh, we also have someone here from Dumsa, Michael Akori. You are welcome from my MSA. You're welcome. Yeah, many of us here do not know a lot about research, myself included. So I am really looking forward to learning about research medicine and also about public health too. Our first speaker is will be talking about the research medicine first, then we'll have the public health medicine come up later. But before our speaker comes up, we'll have a brief speech from our Deputy National Director, Mafo Subechi Philemon. So I'm going to bring him up stage right now so he can give us a brief speech before we call up our speaker. Good evening, sir. Hello.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much. So, can I go ahead?
Yes, you can, please.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Good evening, our able Scosibi family. I believe we're all doing well. I believe we're all doing fine. My name is Wafo Switch Philemon, the Deputy National Director of NIMSA Scosibi 2025. And Ella has already officially welcomed us all, but I also just want to, on behalf of the National Director and myself, welcome each and every one of you once again to Limitless Medicine. We know that this is one of the last things we're using to round up the year in Skosibi, and it's something that is very special to us. It's a project that was born out of a necessity. It's a project that was born out of a need. Now, Skosibi this year, we just concluded two power packed cohorts of the NCBA, but we still understood that we still have to do this because this was something that we put in our plan for the year. And I want you to understand that this is not just an accidental project. This is not just an accidental. It's not just another set of webinars. It's not just another set of things, right? It's actually driven and it's actually aimed at actually making impact. And I just want to encourage every one of us to cooperate. I want to encourage us to participate. Most importantly, I want to encourage us to be intentional because we have a lineup of speakers ready to deliver, ready to speak. But if you're not willing, if you're not ready, if you're not open to take what they have for you will not be able to take it. So I'm not going to take too much time. I'm just saying all of this to prepare our hearts for our first speaker. Right? So let's be ready, let's be open hearted, and let's understand that there's a reason why this is happening. You're not intentional enough to find that reason for yourself. You're not intentional enough to catch the impacts that our speakers are going to be giving. You will not get it. So once again, welcome to Limitless Medicine. And I want you to know that we have a lot lined up for you. All you need to do, get ready to participate, get ready to be fed, get ready to be impacted. At the end of the day, I'm very certain that we're not going to leave these webinars, we're not going to leave these meetings the exact same way we came. So thank you very much. Let's stay, let's stay motivated, let's cooperate, let's participate. And I believe that at the end of the day, we all live here having been impacted. So thank you very much. Well done, Ibu Lucy Chair and moderator. So you can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, our Deputy National Director, Nwafo Subechi Philemon. As he has said, ensure that you are open to learn. This is not just another series of webinars. This is a different webinar that can set you on the right trajectory to that future that you envision to have in the various fields of medicine that you dream to be in. Thank you once again for that wonderful speech. We'll be calling up our first speaker right away, Dr. Ozem Michael. But before I call him up, I will read a brief citation of our speaker. Dr. Ozem Michael Uzochukwu is a medical doctor who hails from Delta State and currently resides in Abuja. He had he had his medical training in the prestigious University of Abuja, where he graduated as the overall best graduating student, bagging multiple distinctions in the process. Wow. During his medical school period, he was involved in multiple volunteer and mentorship schemes and even won a research grant for his work on depression and academic performance among medical and veterinary medical students, which he partnered with the LTH. He has also co-founded an NGO for advocacy on mental health disorders. He currently works in a medical research facility and has participated in multiple researches, even winning a university grant for his work on mental health and academics among medical and veterinary medical students in the University of Abuja, which he also partnered with the LTH. He has also co-founded another NGO called Let's Talk Health. Aside that, he is also a professional model and award-winning singer. With that, let us invite and welcome our first speaker who will be delivering a powerful session on research medicine. You're welcome, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, that's great. It's really, really nice to be here. I feel very honored. Thank you so much for your warm welcome. So, without taking much of our time, I'll just go straight to the lecture. So, I'll try to share my screen so that you guys can have access to the slides that I'm presenting. Okay. Uh, so, can you see my screen now?
Not yet, we can't see it.
Okay, so I'm not very familiar with this platform, but I will try. Mm, yeah. Can you see it now?
Okay,
Can you see the screen now?
yes, we
Are you
can.
able to? Okay, that's great. All right. So I'm going to be talking about research medicine as advancing scientific knowledge and clinical practice. Now, we all know that medical practice is constantly evolving. We've moved from the period of time where we're focused on disease to where we became focused on individuals with illness, right? And progressively, we're heading towards the era of focus on genetics. That is basically identifying disease conditions from when they're from their genetic level, and then trying to provide personalized medicine. And so this is sort of like the future of medicine, and is where we're hoping to get to. And research medicine is the frontier for that. All right, so my name is Dr. Ochen Michael, as you already know, and I currently work at the Cardiovascular Research Center, University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, as a research medical officer. So, research medicine involves the application of research methods to understand diseases, to create new treatments, and to improve health. So, basically, it's using the various skills and techniques used for research in order to understand the disease process. So you want to understand pathophysiology, how disease come about, and how diseases are managed. And then you also want to understand, you also want to create new treatment modalities. Like I said, treatment is constantly evolving. We're constantly developing new guidelines and treatment protocols for various disease conditions. And all these are dependent on the findings that we have from research. And so when it comes to creating new treatments, it could be either in the creation of drugs, so it could be the creation of new medications to address a new point in the pathophysiology process, or it could also be in treatment procedures. So the different ways treatment is done, especially when it comes to surgical management of diseases. And then also it could also be in the creation of devices to help manage, to help properly treat diseases. I actually I was a part of I'd say a conference or a workshop in a conference actually, where there was a presentation on this um, m- device that you wear across your wrist, just like a wristwatch, that sort of monitors markers that shows if a person's platelet is going to drop to a level where she's going to develop PPH. So it was. I well know that coagulability is one of the problems of that. It's one of the causes of postpartum hemorrhage. So that is something like that. So it's when you create devices that you can use to properly manage disease better. And the ultimate aim of all of this is in order to improve health and well-being of our patients. Now, there are various roles that research medicine plays. The first one is improving diagnosis. So you want to find out if there are better ways to diagnose certain disease conditions, if there are better ways to, or quicker ways to diagnose disease, or earlier ways to diagnose disease conditions. For instance, diseases like Alzheimer's, we want to see if we can diagnose it as early as possible. So that's one of the roles of research medicine. You want to improve diagnosis. And then also treatment, like I explained earlier, you want to see if there are better ways to manage certain disease conditions. And this can lead to the development of new treatment protocols or treatment guidelines. And so you also want to see if there are also ways in which you can prevent disease from actually happening. So research medicine allows for evidence-based practices, which is the foundation of modern medicine. Now, when we attend to patients, usually we treat them based off of research evidence. So, what does the book say? What's the latest findings? What is the latest research discovery? And this is very important because it allows us to make sure that we're giving our patients the most generally accepted treatment care for their disease conditions. And this is very important because we want to make sure that our patients are getting the best, right? So it's very important that we treat them based off of evidence. We treat using evidence-based practices. And this is also important because it explains why we can't just keep our knowledge level or our knowledge bank at a particular level. Information is constantly growing. So there's a constant growth in translational research. And so you need to know what research have actually been developed to the extent that it can actually now be used in the management of patients. So it's important for medical students to understand the rudiments and the intricacies involved in medical research. So what does it involve? How is it done? And how can they participate in research? Okay, sorry, that was too much. All right, so there are many different branches of research in medicine. The first one is the basic research. That's also called the bench research or the preclinical research. We're going to be discussing each of these in a little bit more details and subsequent slides. So we're also going to be talking about clinical research, translational research, a little bit on public health research, and then on health systems and implementation research. So now when it comes to basic science research or bench research or biochemical research, however way you want to paint it, it basically involves using cells, tissues, or molecules to understand disease mechanisms or um, checking for new ways in which you can do treatments before you then try this on humans. Now, this is something that is a very well known research branch. Basically, it's what you do in the labs. Yeah, so where you have some people use just cells, so you work with microscope and you do very basic research. Not It's not basic, but it's called basic research, right? So, but it can be quite complicated, right? Because you have to grow cultures, you have to grow cells in multiple different culture mediums. So yeah, sometimes you use just cells, sometimes you can use tissues, and sometimes you can use the whole organism. So I'm sure we're familiar with research that makes use of maybe like mice, right? So this is the bench research. For instance, if you want to find out if a particular medication can improve insulin secretion, you wouldn't just try it in humans or in diabetic patients, right? So you want to try it on cells of the pancreas. So you want to grow these cells and then expose them to this medication, and then subsequently measure the amount of insulin that was produced. So it's basically just a straightforward start. It can be a little bit tricky and a little bit complicated, but it's basically it's like the bedrock of research. So basically, you use cell cultures, you can use animal models, you can use molecular studies, and then it helps you to identify the mechanisms of disease. So how does this, you can also use to understand how disease progresses, right? So how is this disease developed? What's the progress? How does it get how does it progress? Basically, how does it get worse? And then how can you manage it at different points? And then through making use, through this form of research, when you identify the pathophysiology of disease, you can see the step-by-step process and how disease actually cause damage to the organism that it is infesting. Then you can actually look towards the creation of medications to halt this disease process at different points, multiple different points. And this is very important because this is basically the how we develop medications, how we draw up treatment plans. Now, usually it involves the identification of the mechanism of disease, and it really plays a huge role in discovering drugs and also in therapeutic innovations. For example, is also studying genetic mutations leading to cancer. So when you find the genes that predispose people to having cancer, you can create medications to alter those genes. It could act maybe like on the receptors or on the downstream of the pathway. So there are many different ways that you can act, but it's very interesting. I don't think it's for everybody. Some people don't fancy having to spend a lot of time in the labs, but for those people who do, it's something that they actually find very fulfilling. I have a colleague who absolutely loves bench research. So yeah, it's for, I guess it's for who it's for, right? Uh, yeah. So I think the closest thing that we sort of get the experience with is probably doing the pathology year in medical school. So you spend a lot of time with a microscope, yeah. So that's sort of like what it's like. Then the next one is the clinical research. Basically, this involves using human subjects for your studies. There are like four different phases of clinical trials, and fortunately, I've been a part of some of these processes. So the first one is the four phases of clinical trials, right? So in the phase one, you want to find out if what you're testing is safe, right? So you develop a new medications, you've tested it on animal, you have confirmed that it doesn't cause damage, or you've confirmed a certain level of dosage that limits toxicity. So then you bring it into the clinical arm, right? So for the clinical research, the first phase is to find out if it's safe. So during this phase, you want to assess for safety, you want to assess dosage range. So what's the optimal dosage to give this medication in order for you to get the maximum response, right? And then also at what level should you not increase the dosage of this medication in order to limit toxicity? What's the minimum amount of this medication that is necessary to be able to get the desired results? So all of these questions are sort of answered. They are answered in the phase one of the clinical trial. We also want to find out, are there any side effects of this medication? So what are the side effects that come up when you take this medication at certain dose, and how can you properly manage it? And so usually during this process, you use just a small number of healthy adults, usually between 20 to 100. So you don't want to use too many people. I usually use healthy people, right? Because you want to make sure that the people that can recover from whatever complications that might arise. And then secondly, that's the phase two. You want to find out if this medication actually works, right? So remember, you've tested it on healthy people. You found out the range in which it can be administered, the minimum range and the maximum range. You found out that is safe. It can actually be used in humans. The next thing you want to find out is, does it work? So does this medication have some sort of use in clinical setting? And so typically what is done is that you take patients with this disease condition that you're trying to treat, maybe like hundreds or 300 of them, and then you administer this medication. So you want to find out, does this medication work at all? So usually you just take about 100 to 300 people, and then you give this medication. So you can say that the number is more than the number you use for phase one, right? So you give them this medication, you want to see if they get better, there's some improvements to their life basically, and then what dose does this medication work most optimally, right? So this is what you're checking for in the second phase. Then the third phase is you want to compare this new treatment with the current standard of treatment, right? Because most diseases already have like a standard of treatment. So if a person is having this condition, you want to give them this disease, right? So if they're having this disease, you want to give them this medication, right? So you want to compare the effects that you have with the normal standard of treatment, and then as against the treatment plan you're trying to introduce. So, like I said, I've had some experience with this. There was this combination pill that I got to work on. So it was like a combination pill against the single pill medication, and I found out that there was better compliance with the combination pill, and there was also a better response to treatment with the combination pill. So that is a phase three clinical trial. Usually, you use a large group of people. About 1,000 to 3,000, because remember, you want to, before you can make such a generalized statement that this medication works better than the current standard of practice, you have to make sure that you've been able to get a form of guarantee, like what you have is substantial, right? I hope that makes sense. So you usually divide the people into groups, right? So you want to have a group that is taking the current standard of treatment, and then you have a group that is currently taking the treatment you're trying to introduce. So you want to find out how efficacious is it. You want to monitor for any adverse effects, and then you also need to do this step before you can have it. Before you can have this medication actually approved by the regulatory board, right? So you need to prove to them that the medication you're trying to introduce into the healthcare system is actually one that it works, and not just work, but actually is able to compete favorably with the current treatment of the current standard of treatment. All right, and then finally, the phase four. Usually, this is now to find out, is this medication safe in real life, right? So this can take a long time. It can take yeah, multiple years, right? Because you've released this medication to the public now. This medication has been accepted as a standard of treatment, and so you want to monitor people taking this medication in the general population. So, are there any long-term side effects that you probably did not notice during the other phases of the clinical trials? And are there any other maybe like a rare adverse effect that can come up also? Because you remember you just had about 3,000 people, and then that is probably less than the number of people in one city in Nigeria. So you know that there are people that might have certain kinds of idiosyncratic reactions to the medication. So you want to do a post-market surveillance. So you just want to make sure that you're following, just generally, you're keeping an eye on whatever complaints that people have from taking the medication. All right. So basically, clinical research is just to evaluate for the safety, the dosing, and the efficacy of the medication released, and it's also to generate evidence for regulatory board approval. Like I said, before you can get your medication approved and released into the market, you have to get the approval of the regulatory board. And this, before you can get the approval, you have to have done a clinical trial. Excuse me. So the next is the translational research. Um, Okay, so basically, this is how you want to. These are the research that sort of combines or transmits laboratory findings into clinical applications, right? So recently, I actually read about one in the New England Journal of Medicine. It was actually a gene editing that was done to treat a baby born with common phosphate synthase 1 deficiency, right? So the patient had. Can you guys still hear me? It sort of went through the silence. I don't think you still the silence. Can I still be heard? Okay, I hope so. Hello? Okay, I hope you can still hear me. So just
Yes,
go on. Okay, that's good. I guess you sort of went quiet a little bit. All right, that's fine. So like I was saying, I recently read about translational research that was done in the US. It was actually gene editing that was done to treat a child born with carbon phosphate synthesis 1 deficiency. And so it was basically the child was diagnosed, and then the bench research was done, and the medication was developed in order to sort of like displace this, fix this gene defect. Sorry, fix this gene defect, and then it was administered to the child very early, so that because typically if you don't give that medication on time, the child can begin to have like the effects of the disease condition, right? So it was done very quickly, and so this is very beautiful expression of translational research, right? So when you do a bench research to find the solution, then take it to go and fix a clinical problem. So it's I think it's one of the most beautiful aspects of research, right? Because you sort of like get this immediate gratification of what you've done. You find a problem, you go to your lab, you fix a possible solution, and then you sort of like go to the patient and you do it and get the result. So it accelerates the development of diagnostics and also for therapies. Um, so
hello,
it's just
sir.
like, yeah, can you hear me?
So sorry to cut you. Our listeners, they are commenting that you're speaking really fast and they'd love if you could slow down a little bit.
My sincerest apologies. I've actually been known to speak a little too fast, so I would really try to speak a little bit slower and also to enunciate better so that you can hear me clearly.
Thank you so
Ah,
much.
all right, definitely fine. So yes, as I was explaining, I said that I think translational research is one of my personal favorite kinds of research, right? Because you find a problem in the clinic, right? A patient with a particular disease condition, and then you go to your lab, you try to fix up a solution for them as soon as possible, and then you go back to the bedside and you administer your proposed solution. And usually you get the desired results. So it's just like you find a person who has a cancer gene, right? And then you go to the lab, you develop a medication to inhibit or to target that particular gene, and then you go through a little bit of clinical trials and use it for the patient. Once it's safe, the patient has been cured. So it's very interesting. It's one of my favorite aspects of research. Now it's yeah. So the next we have epidemiological research. Basically, this is just done to study the patterns of disease in population, right? So you want to find out what's the distribution of disease, what's the control, what's the rate at which disease occurs. You want to find out who gets the disease. So what are the factors that make people um, what are the factors that make people predisposed to having certain diseases? So we know that certain diseases are more common among older people, certain diseases are more common among certain genders of people, and then certain occupation, right? So, for instance, people who work in quarry sites are more likely to have some lung diseases, right? And then some people too, as they get older, if you're going to get something like, let's say, breast cancer, for instance, right? It occurs more in older people. So you want to find out who are these people predisposed to these diseases, and this is what epidemiological research does. You just want to find out where does this disease occur, right? So what communities are most likely to have this disease conditions, what regions of the world are most likely to have these disease conditions. You just want to find out when does disease occur, right? So we know that certain diseases are more common during certain periods of time, right? For instance, meningitis, you have it coming up in outbreaks. So you want to find out when does this disease most likely occur. Because we're going to be targeting therapies or preventive measures for these diseases. It has to be when it's useful, when it's necessary, right? So imagine selling raincoats in dry seasons, right? You won't sell that much. But when you begin to sell them during the rainy season, then it's a big business. So yeah, that's basically what these are things that epidemiological research sort of tries to explain, right? And then also why do people come up with these diseases? So what are the risk factors that predispose people to having certain diseases, right? Because we know that you could expose two individuals to the same conditions, right? Same environmental conditions, and then they don't have one person develops the disease and the other person doesn't, right? So you want to find out why. So all of this, when, who, where, why, these are questions that are answered in under epidemiological research. So now it's done to identify risk factors and then to develop preventive strategies. Now there are different methods of doing epidemiological research. The first one is cohort. So if you're doing a cohort research, basically what you want to do is to get people and divide them into groups, right? And then based off of their exposures. So, for instance, if you want to find out if maybe smoking can lead to lung cancer, right? So you get two groups of people. Usually, you do some level of standardization, so they have every other factor similar except the risk factor you're comparing. So you could get two men that are 49 years old with a BMI of say 26, and every other thing has been standardized, right? But the only difference is that one is a smoker, the other that one has developed the disease that's cancer and one has not, right? So most of the time, um, sorry, let me just take that again so I don't confuse you. So you want to find out two groups of people, right? So some have the exposure, they're exposed to the risk factor of the disease, and some are not, right? So you want to follow them up and then find out which of these groups developed the disease, what's the percentage within the group that developed the disease, and then is it clinically relevant, right? Because sometimes your data might be statistically relevant, but might not be clinically relevant, right? So you want to find out if you have two groups of people of say 50-50 individuals, and then out of the 50 that were exposed to, say, cigarette smoking, you have about 40 of them developing cancer. And then out of the 50 that were not exposed to cigarette smoking, you have just maybe like 5 of them developing cancer. So that's a very significant difference, right? So this is what we do in cohort research. So you divide them into two groups, and then you do a prospective study. A retrospective study can also be done, but most of the time it's usually prospective. Then the second is case control. In case control, basically you start from the outcome and then you go back to the risk factor, right? So it is retrospective most of the time. So you take two groups of people. Sorry, one of them, one group has the disease that you're looking for, say lung cancer, and then the other group does not have the lung cancer, and then you want to go through their medical records, right? So you want to see among people that have lung cancer were there any specific risk factors that were exposed to that predisposed them to having this lung cancer that the other group of people were not exposed to? I hope that makes some level of sense. So it's usually a retrospective study, right? So you white cohort study, you go from risk factor to disease development. In case control study, most of the time you go from the disease and then you go retrospective to the risk factors, right? So the next is the cross-sectional studies, right? This is just a snapshot of the population. So you want to check both the exposure and the outcome at the same time, right? So what people that have currently smoking, what people that have cancer. Yeah, so from a cross-sectional study, I cannot actually ascertain causality. So you cannot say this is what causes this, because it just tells you the number of people within the population that have the risk factor and the people that have the disease currently. But it doesn't, you can, since it's not something that is that you follow up for patients for a period of time, or you follow up participants for a period of time, you cannot actually examine determine causality, unlike cohort and case control study. So just an example you can use to determine the links between smoking and COPD. So now there are different components of a good research study. The first one is a clear research question, right? So before you go into any research, you want to ask yourself, what am I trying to figure out? What question am I trying to answer? And this is very important because you don't just want to be doing research for research sake. You just want to be doing study for study's sake. You want to be doing something that is going to be contributing to the general body of knowledge, right? So you want to be doing something that is relevant or something that will make a difference, right? So usually if you spend your time around people who do research, you would see that usually they have like a research focus, right? So people don't just jump from maybe you're doing a research on cervical cancer today, and then tomorrow you're doing a research on lung cancer, and then maybe next tomorrow you're doing a research on copperhead snakes. You know, you can just usually they have like a focus, so they're usually trying to sort out a particular problem. So you want to have a clear research question. Usually you have like two or three of these. Okay, so one of the research I did was to find out the knowledge and attitude and practice of women within the city of Guadalajara to cervical cancer screening, right? So I wanted to find out, do they know about the screening? Are they open to getting screened? And then are they open to getting vaccinated, right? So you want to have a clear research question because this is going to drive the focus of your research. Then the second one is a strong study design. So depending on what you're trying to find out, you want to make sure that you're selecting the right study design. This is a relatively broad and a little bit complex thing, so I would not be dwelling too much on it, but you can do a little bit of research and then just learn about it. So also you want to have the appropriate sample size, right? So you want to make sure that the sample size of the people the sample size you're studying is one that the result is going to be relevant, right? So you can't be doing a study on a relatively common disease and then be using a very small sample size, right? Because it means that there's possibility that your result is not generalizable, right? So you want to make sure that the result you have is something that can actually be generalized. So, but then there are certain studies that use very few sample size. I think I've seen one that the sample size was just about 7 people thereabout, right? So some of these diseases are like really rare disease conditions. So for something like this, you can use a case control study, right? Because you find people that have the disease and then you can go back. But imagine if you're trying to just do like a cross-sectional study, you might not even find anybody with the disease in the entire population that you're checking, right? Because it's a rare disease. So you have to select the appropriate sample size depending on what you're trying to find out and the condition you're trying to also, research about. And then you want to use valid, reliable measurement tools, right? So if you're trying to say what's the percentage of people that have depression, you have to use a standardized tool to measure that, right? I'm trying to think of, I just can't remember the tool I used for the study I did. Just sort of skip my mind right now. So yeah, so you want to make sure you use a standardized tool because before you can say that these people had this condition, you have to be able to prove why they had this, how you know that they had this condition, right? So you want to use very standardized tools. And then you want to make sure you get ethical approval and informed consent. Now, this is super important. This is very, very important. You cannot coerce people into being a part of a study, and then you also shouldn't sort of like bribe them to. Why usually it's okay to give some sort of incentive during the research process. You shouldn't make it. I think there's sort of like rule that sort of even regulates how much you're allowed to give them, right? Because you don't want to make people come and do what they wouldn't typically do because of the incentive you're providing, right? So because research is fully voluntary, and at any point in the research that you want to pull out is absolutely fine. You cannot you can't let it affect their care, right? So sometimes, I mean, you all know I'm a doctor, so sometimes I'm doing a research, I'm working with one of my patients, and then at some point they feel like they can't continue with the research, and it's totally fine. They're allowed to pull out of the research, right? And then you cannot, because you say, oh, okay, so you're no longer participating in my research, and then you don't make their clinical experience as pleasant as it used to be. So that's not professional. So you have to make sure that you collect an informed consent, and it's very important, this process of informed consent collection, because they need to be aware of what it is that they're going to be participating in, right? So is it an observational research or is it an experimental research? What is their role? Are they going to be having to give you samples? Are they going to have to come to the hospital more frequently than usual? Are they going to have to invite you to their house, like for the follow-up visits, right? So they need to be fully aware of what they're going to be doing and their roles, and this will help them to know if it's something that they can participate in or if it's something they can actually work with. And then ethical approval, you have to get ethical approval of the institution that you intend to do the research in. This is also very important. And then accurate data analysis. So you have to get, if you're going to do your data analysis yourself, you can go ahead and do it, but make sure that you have the skill for it, right? You can also employ professional data analysts that can do it for you. So whichever one works for you, it's fine. And then also transparent reporting, right? So you don't want to give like an impression like you didn't say exactly what happened or say exact results. Sometimes you're doing a research and you're hoping for a certain result and then you don't get it, right? When you're reporting, you have to state exactly what the result you got. That makes your research credible, right? So you want to make sure you do that. Okay, so there are various study designs. If you're doing an observational study, that's one in which you're not doing any. Oh, wow, time is running so fast. So if you're doing an observational study, one in which you're not, doing anything for the patients, you're not giving any um, medications, you're just strictly observing the patient. You can do a cross-sectional study or a cohort study or a case control study, right? I already explained those one. But if you're doing an experimental study, you can do a randomized control study. This is actually the gold standard in clinical research. So basically, you get groups of people, you put the participants into groups, and then you sort of like follow them up, right? And then you see their response or develop any adverse reactions. Or usually, it is done to test out new drugs or new therapies. And then also the field trials. Usually, this is done to in preventive interventions to elderly individuals, right? So, for instance, development of new vaccines. So you want to give it to the entire field, to everybody who lives in a particular location, something like that. So it could like when the COVID-19 vaccines were made available, right? So that's an example of field trial. While it was still being developed, it could have gone through field trial phases, right? So where it's made available, then people within the community can come in and get vaccinated. And then for community interventions, this is when you do an intervention that affects an entire community as a whole, right? So for instance, if they have like a centralized source of water, you can add some fluorine to it, right? So to fluoridize the water source of the community, you're sort of like affecting the entire community because everybody's going to get their water from that particular source, right? So these are some study designs. So I'll be wrapping up shortly. Evidence-based medicine, basically, like I said, is making sure that your treatment plans or your treatment guidelines or protocols integrates the best available research, right? So you're not treating patients with the same way people were treating that disease 20 years ago, right? You want to make sure that they are getting the most recent approved treatment plans. So it also helps your clinical expertise, and then it also increases your patient, improves your patient outcome. So if you're talking about the pyramid of evidence, I don't think that's very necessary right now. It's just saying that the lowest evidence is expert opinion, right? So that's what you're doing these treatment plans based off of what your boss says or what your mentor says, right? So it's the lowest level of evidence. Then there's case reports or case series, there's case control studies, cohort studies. Randomized control studies are one of the best evidences out there, and the absolute best is systematic reviews. All right, so ethics and research. You want to respect the person. You want to make sure you do no harm. You want to make sure justice is maintained. You want to take informed consent. You want to protect vulnerable populations. Very important. And then you want to make sure that you get approval from the institutional review board or institutional ethical committee. All right, so medical students in research, what can you do? The first one is you can participate in faculty projects, right? So I can assure you that there's constant research happening wherever it is that you're getting your training. So you want to reach out to your mentors or your teachers and tell them they're interested, right? So it might not necessarily be people who teach you. It could be senior residents or junior residents. Trust me, they're constantly doing research. So you can reach out to them and tell them you want to be involved voluntarily, right? So you just help them out. You can do maybe data collection. You can help to write proposals. You can help to do data analysis. There's so many different things that you could do. So you could help them. Secondly, you could also conduct student-led research, right? So I got to participate in the faculty research as a student. I also did my student-led research. You can also help to present research findings at conferences, right? So this is something, funny enough, most Nigerian students don't really do it. But if you interact with students outside of the country, you see that there's a lot of times, many of them have had experience presenting at conferences. And then you could also publish in peer-reviewed journals or also in your university journal. And I'm sure every university has a journal, so you can publish your research findings there. So what do you stand to gain? You get critical thinking skills, academic growth, and then it really, really helps your CV. It's very, very important for that. So there are many different new emerging areas in medical research. There's AI and machine learning in diagnostics. There's gene editing. I spoke about a case I read about that. There's precision medicine. There's digital health and telemedicine, and then there's immunotherapy. There's some challenges affecting medical research. They include funding limitation. Yeah, so there's not enough fund for research. It's a general problems. There are also ethical issues. So if you're saying that there's a standard of treatment and you're testing this patient against a new treatment, and how do you know that you're not doing this patient a disservice, right? Because what if that new treatment that doesn't work? It means that the patient has lost time that he could have benefited from just getting the standard treatment, right? So there's ethical issues. There's also recruitment difficulties. A lot of people don't want to be used as test subjects, right? So sometimes it can take a lot of convincing for them to want to participate, especially in a place like Nigeria. And then there's a bias and reproducibility problem. Sometimes you might do a research today and then you get this result and you repeat the same thing. Is everything is the same. Do it tomorrow. It's a whole different result. So those are the problems. And then sometimes it might be difficult to get approval. So in conclusion, research is essential for medical progress. Medical students can play an important role in this, and then it's very important to engage in research as early as possible. And then medicine advances when we question, we investigate, and we innovate. So I do hope that you've been able to learn a thing or two from these little presentations. Thank you very much. That's my entire slide.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ochem. It was really nice hearing you speak. I will say I learned a lot. I'm really surprised to hear you call your presentation a little presentation. There was a lot of information on your presentation. Thank you very much, sir, for a very detailed and apt presentation. Quickly, we'll be given 5 to 10 minutes for questions. So if you have questions, please type your questions in the comments and I will read them out to our speaker. Okay, before our listening audience asks their questions, I have few questions of mine that I want to ask. Yes. Okay. This is my first question. Okay, if you had to restart your research journey again as a medical student, what are the things that you would have personally done better, and what are can you share a few mistakes that you made in the journey, or things that you would have done better that you feel that people actually need to hear?
Oh, okay. So do I take all the questions or I just answer it as you go?
Yes, as you go, sir.
Okay, that's fine. So if I could restart my research journey, what are the mistakes that I made or things I wish I could have done better? Yeah. Okay, I'd say that the first was to actually engage in research a lot earlier in my career. And I say this because while I started off more than or earlier than an average medical student, right? I actually did my first I assisted in my first research. I got my first research experience in my fourth year in medical school, right? And then I did my student-led project in my fifth year. I would say that I really wish I had started a lot earlier, right? So, just like every other aspect of our lives, the more you engage in certain activities, the better you get at it, right? And then the more opportunities open up to you, right? So, I wish I had started up a little bit earlier. And then secondly, I wish I had been a little bit more proactive, right? So most of the time, I just waited for research opportunities to come, and some of them came. The ones I participated in, usually they just they came to me because for many different factors, right? So, but if I had been a little bit more intentional, I had been a little bit more proactive, I would have definitely gotten a lot more experience when it comes to research. And this is the advice I would want to give to people, right? So reach out to people. This is something that I really did not start doing early, right? So reach out to people. And most of the time, the problem is that we forget to prioritize long-term benefits. Most of the time, we're looking for the most immediate. So why will I analyze your research work for you for free, right? But that is you getting some learning experience. That might get you your name in the publication. And trust me, that's a very big deal, right? So you want to reach out to people, build relationship network, right? So, and I'm not just saying you should limit yourself to those in your immediate surroundings, right? If you see somebody who you think this person is somebody who you would like to do some level of collaboration with or network with, just reach out to them. You'll be surprised that some of the really big names are actually really down to earth, and they'll be more than ready to actually help you and work with you. So I would say that be ready to give more than you're open to taking, right? So participate, reach out to people, your mentors, your university lecturers, residents within your institutions that are currently doing research. All the residents that you know are definitely doing research, right? So reach out to them, ask them how you can help, right? It's not what can you benefit, it's how you can help make it a little bit easier for them. Help them to gather data. I think I did this for a number of my senior colleagues, like a lot of them, so I help them gather data, and it's all for free. I just reached out to them. Hey, I know you're busy right now and you're running a project. These are people when we're still in the medical student, right? I'm sure that most schools, their final year students do research work, right? So reach out to your final year students, find out what they're doing, find out if it's any of the areas that interest you, and then go into that, help them gather data, help them work through the process. And then finally, pick your research niche early, right? So when I was starting out, again, I just waited for research to come to meet me where I was. So I was just getting random research. Today, I got to work on neurosurgery team research. I worked on an ONG research. I worked on internal medicine research. It was just many research, right? They were not very connected. So, but now that I have a structured path, some of those research are not very relevant in my field, right? So you want to make sure that early enough you sort of like have a direction of where you intend going. I can talk on and on, so I'll just try to stop here at this point.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. One thing that I really took from what you just said is starting early with a starting early with a direction. And I hope that our listening audience is taking that. Then for the last question for this session, so we can head on to the next. Um, aside CV building, yeah, aside the role of research in building CV, what other career paths does research open doors?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just realized I was muted. Okay, so the research itself is an aspect of medicine, right? It's called academic medicine. That's research and teaching, right? So research is an aspect of medicine. There are doctors who are basically just researchers, right? So it could be that they are just fully into maybe bench research, and then it could be that they're into public health research. So that's an aspect of medicine. Not all doctors are going to be working in the hospitals or in the clinic, right? And then there's also the whole branch of academic medicine as a whole, right? So you have your professors within your preclinical professors, right? So any professor of physiology or professor of anatomy, they're doing research. So research is a field of medicine, right? So besides the fact that it builds your CV, if you're going into other aspects of medicine, it in itself is a field of medicine, right? And then besides that, there's also the fact that you also contributed to the general body of knowledge, right? So I read somewhere that we die twice. The first time is when we actually, pass on, and then our heart starts beating and we die. And the second time is the last time our names are ever said, right? So that's the second and final death. So if you do something that is significant enough, the world will remember you, and that is something that I think is not a small thing. I think the ability or the opportunity to contribute to global knowledge is something that is really important, and you're making a difference. You're going to be making a difference. So I believe that it's not just about building your CV. I don't actually think about, even if I'm going to be participating in research that is not going to include my name in the publication, it should include your name, But even if it's not, the mere fact that you're going to be able to make a difference for a random person out there in the couple of years to come, I think that is very beneficial. So yeah, so there's the fact that it's a field. If you is something you're really interested in, you could go into academic medicine. And there's the fact that there's also the public health, right? So there's the NPH, the PhD route of medicine, right? So those are people that not everybody goes into clinical practice. And then you can also build your CV for your clinical practice. And then generally, I think just the fulfillment that you are making a difference, I think that's something to be well sort of done. Yeah. You still with me? Welcome back.
Thank you so much. So sorry, I had a brief network disturbance
It's fine. It
and
happens.
I couldn't hear the remaining parts of your response.
I think generally all I just said was like you could follow the pathway of academic medicine. So that could be training and research as an entire field on its own. You could go into the public health research field. That's the NPH, PhD route. And then you could also help push your CV for maybe if you're going to clinical practice. But generally, the entire fact that you're making a difference and you're contributing to the general body of knowledge, I believe that that itself is its own reward. So yeah, that's the summary of what I just said.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for that
Mhm.
response. Okay, so academic medicine is very much linked to research medicine and they go hand in hand. So that's a career path that one can take in going into research. Thank you so much, sir. We will be calling up our second speaker right away, Dr. Ekenediruchukwu Ahaniko, who will be taking us on public health medicine. Can we give a round of applause in the comment section as he takes the stage? Good evening, sir. Can you hear me? Hello, sir.
Oh yeah, good evening. Can I be
Good.
heard now? Tell me if you can hear me.
Hear you. You're welcome, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. to this particular section. I am very sorry. I didn't prepare any slide to discuss with us this evening, but I believe that it's really going to be a worthwhile conversation. And first, I was opportune to be shared with the survey that was done by the organizers for this particular capacity building section, and I was meant to understand that a good number of medical students are interested in public health and medicine, and it's something that interests me so much, and that is the reason why, like from med school, this has been an area of interest for me, and I believe for people who indicated interest to see this happen today means that they have interest in this area as well, right? So I'm going to start by telling us a little story about myself and how I was able to get to the point I am in public health today. So, during our medical school days, we had a lot of medical students who were really interested in clinical medicine. And it seems like when you think about public health, it's not really like you are seeing medicine the way it should be. I was so happy when the last speaker was saying something about, we having different areas of medicine. And, when you look at research and the things we can do around research, it can actually help us understand that we still have great areas that we need to actually, work in and also create a personal space for ourselves. So, like I said, when I was in medical school, I actually thought being a doctor, meant only just one thing. And I think some medical students still see it that same way, like, treating patients in the hospital and just doing clinical practice alone. But today, after years of service from, medical school leadership, emergency response, primary care, and, public health advocacy, I've learned something powerful which I'll be sharing with us. First, we need to understand that medicine is not just a profession, it is a platform for impact. So when we have this at the back of our mind, it helps us, revolutionize what we really want to achieve in the field of medicine. So, and we need to understand that we always have the capacity to lead even before our graduation. So you creating a space for yourself and ensuring that you want to grow in that area means that you are trying to, you know, will I say, um, identify yourself or understand the path that you are creating for yourself. Because I understand that, most times when we think about career pathway, because of the Japa syndrome, everybody thinks about maybe which country am I going to. So if I have interest going to US or maybe going to going to the UK or some European countries, we say Black pathway, something like that. If we have interest going to the US, we start thinking about USMLE pathway and all of them. That is not just the pathway. That is just like an an opportunity for us to leave the country, and possibly all of those are exams you need to write for you to be in the clinical practice, so to say. But we have different areas, like we are talking about public health right now. So as a medical student, this is time for you to figure out what you want to do. And public health is so vast. Now, let's look at it this way. Let's create something that you need to, really accept and build on. First off, when you do clinical medicine, it's an opportunity for you to treat just a few people, like one or two people. But public health is medicine at a population level. So you have an opportunity to control the actions, the activities, the health outcomes of a lot of people by your activities. It can be health system strengthening. It can be in the area of ensuring that advocacy is top notch. The area of making sure that you reduce the effect of outbreaks. There are a lot of things you can do under the field of public health. So, as a medical student myself, I was able to, have a lot of things figured out, but I did not figure everything out. Even as I'm talking to you now, there are still a lot of things I'm still figuring out. And another thing you need to do if you're interested in public health medicine is that you need to ask a lot of questions. I ask questions about systems, I ask questions about equity, I ask questions about a lot of areas that are interested to me. Like Growing up, I have volunteered for 23 years for the Nigerian Red Cross Society. In fact, just now, I just entered my state. We had a program in Abuja, and it was more like we call it SLL, just trying to find a way to integrate life course vaccination or immunization. This is something that is a bit new in our pediatrics classes, or maybe community medicine classes. They always tell us about routine immunization, right? But in life course immunization, it tries to integrate different, levels of immunization for different categories of people, like different ages, be it, the childhood immunization, talking about adolescents, adults, elderly people. So it's something that is very, very important that we need to preach here in Nigeria. And why I'm saying that it's very important for you to ask questions is because public health is very vast, and for you to understand where you want to be, excuse me, you need to ask a lot of questions, and you need to be clear about what you want to do. Sorry, you cannot do everything yourself. And people ask questions a lot. A lot of people come up to say, okay, what are you going to be getting from public health? I kid you not, it is very lucrative even in our country and when you leave the country. So I know what my salary looked like when I was very much active in clinical practice, and currently when I'm fully in public health space. um, we shouldn't be talking about how difficult it is, or maybe how challenging it is, because both clinical medicine, research, public health, even when you are just fully in academia lecturing, there are a lot of things that you need to do. But one thing that is very important is your passion. So, like as a medical student, I was able to serve in different capacities. And one thing that serving as a medical student while you are still in school does for you is that it gives you an opportunity to understand different areas of um, leadership in healthcare, global health, and all of that. And all of those things are embedded in public health. So what that means is that, like myself, I was able to serve as a caucus leader. I was one time director at the Standing Committee on Professional Exchange. Then, at the level of the student union government, I was always there, like year in, year out. I served at the executive arm as the PRO at some point, interim SUG, president, then at the Senate, and all of them. Those things are just there. But one thing that was very important for me is that I wanted to understand how the health sector functions. I was so intentional about my growth in that area. So I I always try to know how things are being done. So if I'm interested knowing about what the state budget is all about, my major interest is about health budget. Is my state meeting up with the Abuja Declaration? And that helps you, get to understand health financing better. So I was opportune to be, the only Nigerian student, medical student and otherwise, that was at the Astana Declaration. Like, it was a global conference on primary health care in Astana, Kazakhstan in 2018 that bettered the Astana Declaration, which was like I'll call it like a modified version of the Amata Declaration that we always know in our public health classes while in community medicine level. So the opportunity that platform gave me was to make me understand the importance of being a medical doctor and being in health financing and health economics. So from that third MBBS class, when I started that, it was an opportunity for me to understand that clearly I have interest in public health. So the reason why I'm telling us this story is to make you understand that, first of all, the only driving force you have in the field of public health is your passion. Because if you are not passionate enough to be in the field of public health, it is very, very demanding. So across board, like I said, I have volunteered in public health space for 23 years. That means while I was still in secondary school, I started volunteering. And within this period of time, I've been able to work in different areas of public health. Public health, like I said, is vast. So I started by volunteering around risk communication and community engagement. So I know some of you will be asking questions. What is risk communication and community engagement? When you talk about the public health emergency operations center, which is a center that is always activated whenever there is an outbreak, it has different pillars, and this is one of the pillars. So what happens in RCCE? RCCE is all about you trying to understand how to give timely and accurate information by carrying the community members along in the information that you plan and how you give them out. So that is where social behavioral change concepts come into play as well. Don't mind me that I'm using all these terms, but I'm just using them to spark your interest around public health. Now, the most important thing in this area is that it gives you an opportunity for you to talk to people about their health, for you to tell people what to avoid, what to prevent, especially in times of outbreak and pandemic. So COVID-19 was a very great opportunity for me to reach out to people, interact with them, and tell them a lot of things. Now, apart from that, we have another area which has to do with ACSM, which is a bit like um, risk communication and community engagement. I was working in this area because then my my technicalities or expertise was not so vast. So apart from clinical medicine, that was an area of public health I think, oh, I can really function very well. But at some point when I started doing, epidemiology, when I started doing a lot about medicine, community medicine, epidemiology became a thing. So I needed to understand what surveillance is all about. I needed to understand what epidemiology is all about. So understanding them, it was an opportunity for me to like start getting into that particular pillar. I needed to be part of people who are doing contact tracing, active case search whenever there is an outbreak. In fact, at some point, I was deployed to epicenters of some diseases. Like I could remember in 2023, I was in Ngugo in Kano State, which was the epicenter for diphtheria outbreak in 2023, and some other ones. I think in 2024, I was in Lagos State, where I visited some, LGAs and communities that were affected that had, massive outbreak of cholera and a lot others in the past. So the reason why I'm mentioning all of these things is to just make you understand that, these areas, like you have roles to play, and there are areas where you can contribute in public health. So saying that you're interested in public health doesn't mean that you do everything. Now, over time, apart from doing all those things, I shifted from surveillance and risk to IPC, which is infection prevention and control. I decided to build myself a little in that area, doing a lot of wash activities and projects. So for the past 5 years, I've been controlling and also, supervising projects that is being funded by British Red Cross in Nigeria, in communities around an LGA here in Southeast Nigeria, and it gave me a lot of experience too. I understood what the sanitation and hygiene protocols are all about, things you needed to do for communities, for schools, for individuals. It was an eye opener. And I know maybe to avoid this coming up as a question, a lot of people will be asking, how does it pay? It's an opportunity as a medical doctor to learn a lot of things that you were not taught in medical school, and you're going to be paid while doing all of these things. So I remember while I was a medical student while in school, I traveled to about 15 countries. Yeah. And apparently all were just some, fully funded opportunities. And then it didn't just end there. Public health has made me travel more. So in recent time, I travel, like my work makes me travel often. And some point you get tired of traveling. And the more you travel, the more you are being paid, you get. So it's very important. And public health makes you assume leadership position in the healthcare industry, right? And one thing we need to understand whenever we talk about leadership is that it is not a title, it is responsibility in action. You have a lot of things that you need to do. So beyond our lecture hall, we need to be able to discover public health early in our life if we are interested in public health, right? And why a lot of people would like to focus only in their exams. I'm not trying to say focusing on your exam is not very important. It's very important. It's good to make distinctions. It's good to be the best graduating student. All of those things are very, very good and very important. But when you know what you want, it's an opportunity for you to like, create a space for yourself and become distinct. Like, there is something that comes with distinction that is not just all about you passing your exams, making 70 and above. You can actually be that person who will be the go-to whenever a particular thing comes up, maybe in your school, in your state, and all of that. And that is one thing we need to understand as medical students. So while we have taken our academics, passing exams very seriously, we need to look at all these other areas. So to tell you something that is very practical around public health medicine and something that you are going to really enjoy is that I've never ever been out of job as a primary care and a public health physician. I've never been out of job. Instead of me to be out of job, I will always have a lot of work to do. Right now, like you will see work and you get tired of work. I'm currently at the office while we are doing this. I told you people earlier that I traveled and I had to come back. I'm at the office because while I'm mentioning areas that I've been interested in and I transition, currently I am doing data system work. So it's more like, being a data manager, a data analyst, and, biostatistics while in medical school. I don't know how it is for you people right now. It's an area that we do not like, to get to because we feel like it's a bit, stressful. But you have your money there. You control a lot of things. You can imagine as a medical doctor who can do all the clinical things and you are as well versed in other areas of public health and you can manage data very well. You're a hot cake. You can work anywhere. Currently, I provide technical assistance to the Honorable Commissioner for Health in the state, and I know what that means. To a great extent, Honorable Commissioner wants to do something, and you be the first person to be called. Oh, Ekene, you need to get this done for me, and you need to make sure we get a very good document that we are submitting to, the minister. We are taking for this conference. We are presenting to the governor, and all of that. Like there is a lot for you to do, and it makes you understand that there are a lot you can do as a doctor, and not just all about clinical practice. And it doesn't stop you from practicing your clinical medicine and doing public health. It's very important. So, out of curiosity, while I was growing up, in this whole public health space, I decided to delve into a lot of organizations and, try to work with a lot of people. Like, first off, the Nigerian Red Cross Society has been an organization that groomed me, not medical school. A lot of people would think, oh, when I say I was traveling a lot, they say it's my medical school that made me travel. Yeah, to some extent. The areas my medical school made me travel has nothing to do with me studying medicine. I was part of the debating union, and for 5 years, I was the debating union president. So debate made me travel a lot. That is on the area of debate. But for medicine and things that has to do with medicine, public health made me travel. So joining Red Cross, which is over 23 years now, it was an opportunity for me to learn a lot of things, in the area of emergency response. I responded during COVID-19 actively, different outbreaks of Lassa fever, cholera, diphtheria. These are major outbreaks in different states of the federation that I responded actively, like either as a rapid response team member or a national disaster response team member, maybe with NCDC or maybe with the NRCS, and all of those things were me trying to be active while I was still in school, and they are really paying off, I must have to say. So apart from those areas, it was an opportunity for me to develop my health promotion work. That was what made me like start up my own NGO as early as when I was still in medical school. I had projects that were funded by UNICEF, projects that were funded by WHO. When even owning an NGO was something that many people didn't want to go into those ventures as medical students. Then I think my NGO was founded in the year 2012, 2013. Then I got it, registered around 2015, 2016. At that point, I was already getting a lot of things with the NGO. Then at some point, I felt like I needed to develop myself. Another very important thing with public health medicine is that you need to really know when you need growth and when you should not be, deceived by the money you are getting. Because when you don't grow, at some point, you are going to be, you're going to be out of market. you need to keep developing yourself. So your MBBS is not a limitation. It is in fact, you can see it as a launch pad. You can see it as a launch pad because it's just one thing that you need to get. When you present your CV, we have a lot of people who are medical doctors, they have MBBS. So what's the special thing about MBBS? To the extent that it is unclassified, especially in a country like Nigeria, you can only mention the number of distinctions you made. Oh, you made distinction, I made distinction too. So it doesn't change anything. But the most important thing is what can you do outside that MBBS that you have? So transition to practice where capacity meets reality is something that is very important. So apart from being in medical school, reality hits hard when you join a system with poor infrastructure, limited resources, communities with unmet needs. How are you going to help these people? So these are not things that you have been taught in medical school. These are things that hands-on practice will let you understand what you're supposed to do and help you do the right thing. And that's why public health is very interesting. You can actually, at some point, get overwhelmed. It's good to get depressed. It's good to get overwhelmed. And there is this saying that people say a lot. They say if your dreams doesn't scare you, they are not big enough. That's one thing that when you are in the public health space as a medical doctor, because you need to be on your toes. You can imagine as a medical doctor, you are seen as the number one person in healthcare industry or in health practice. And there are things that you will not be able to do. Like currently in the organization I work, I'm the team lead. Being the team lead, people who are under you as a manager expect me to do all the things that I wasn't even taught how to do while I was in school. So I have to learn. I have to keep doing a lot of courses for me to meet up with those standards. So as a medical officer of health, I told myself, yes, it's very good to start residency immediately or maybe do it here in Nigeria or elsewhere. But like it would be very good for somebody who is very interested in public health, especially here in Nigeria, for you to give yourself some months or some years of experience understanding what is obtainable in our various communities. This is another thing I would like to leave us with before I end. Because tomorrow, every one of us can leave the country and come back. If you do not really understand how things work in our communities here, like the grassroots, the communities, the facilities at that level, it's going to be a bit difficult for you to fit into the system and solve provide solutions. Why do I say that? I never knew after my HAS job that there are some facilities you can go to. You will be compelled to improvise a lot of practices. You don't have gloves and you're trying to do some certain things. You don't have light. You are going to be making use of your touchlight, your phone touchlight, to actually attend to patients and a lot of other things that you need to improvise. So spending a year, 6 months in that setting, because I worked with the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency through my state, agency, where I was supervising PHCs in a particular LGA and residential in some at some point. So it was an opportunity for me to see what happens at that level. Excuse me. Sorry. So it was an opportunity for me to see what was happening at that level and try to provide solutions. So it was as well capacity building for me because it was preparing me to understand what I'm coming in to do. So most of the things I learned over that a year, 6 months are things I'm using to practice today. So maybe we are in all those high delegation meetings or maybe high impact meetings, and people are trying to understand what is happening at the various grassroots level. All those last mile when it has to do with immunization and all of that. I already have a grassroots understanding of it because I've worked with these people. Even if I leave the country today and decide to come back tomorrow, maybe after advancing in some areas, you're going to be a hot cake. Have any of us thought about someone like a Dr. Chikwe, who was the former boss of NCDC? If you've thought about him and the way he was able to, rise to the position he is today, like after Dr. Tedros, you get him in WHO. That would make you understand that as a medical doctor, there are a lot of things that you're going to get in the public health medicine, and you are limitless if you put in the work. So it's very important that we do that. So medicine needs more than clinicians. This is very important. And I'm pleading with a lot of medical students who are on this call. Medicine needs you in the area of public health. The problem we are having in Nigeria currently is not that we do not have good clinicians that we treat our people. How many of medical doctors are part of health financing? How many of medical doctors are on that table where health economics is being discussed? How many medical doctors are there where policies are being made? These things are very important. So if we are not on those tables, how do we want to change things? So we need to, re-strategize and have a paradigm shift, and also, social re-engineering about things we do in medicine, and accept those areas that can help us better our communities and also the system generally. Because you find out that people for many years they've been in clinical medicine, and some point they just join politics without understanding the rudiments of, you know, health economies, maybe health financing in the area of universal health coverage, and you want to say that you want to solve the problem of universal health coverage. If you do not understand it, you don't know it. That your medical doctor doesn't allow you know that. So you need to study to understand those things. And those are the things public health does for you. So we need doctors that can communicate, that can actually communicate risk during outbreaks, influence policies, like I said earlier, lead health programs, and advocate for funds and equity. So your stethoscope and your voice are equally powerful. Don't get me wrong, it's very important. I do that too. But these other areas are very important, and that's why I'm preaching public health medicine to every one of you today. It's very important and very interesting area. You make your money. I kid you not. I will not mention my salary anyways, but you are going to make your money. And it's a very easy route, or it's a very easy pathway that you can easily grow yourself in different things. You can grow yourself in the area of research as well in public health. So I know this year alone how many publications that I've done. I know the ones that are already in the pipeline that I've submitted to publishing houses. I know the ones that I'm about completing. So these are things that you train yourself, and you contribute to the whole body of the overall global body of knowledge. And it is very important that we do all of those things. So, but another important thing, like I said earlier, is that the system may be tough, but your resilience should and must be tougher. That is what is pushing us. That is the drive in public health, because you have a lot of things you need to do. So, and it's another opportunity for you to serve your community, not just your CV. As you are building your CV, you are serving your community. Impact comes when communities trust you, patients remember your empathy, and systems improve because you show up. It's not just showing up and knowing what to do at that time. Recognition follows service and not the other way around. So you must have to serve for you to be recognized. Some people feel like they should be recognized because they bear the name doctor. No, you have to serve for you to be recognized. So I'm calling on every medical student who is on this call. Your capacity is bigger than you think. Things you can do is bigger than what you are limiting yourself doing right now. You are not just a medical student. You are a system reformer. You have a lot of things you can contribute in the area of system reformation. You are, a voice for the underserved. I've really done a lot of projects in underserved communities around Nigeria. I didn't do them at first because I was interested in getting money, because most of the things you do at that point, you are going to stress yourself, do a whole lot of work, but at the long run, the money will come. It's very important that we know this. At the long run, the money is going to come. So, and we need to start asking questions this early so that you don't miss what our elders missed earlier on. Where can I serve now? It's very important. Don't wait until when you want to become a manager. I can bet you that most of my colleagues who have spent the number of years I've spent in medical practice cannot be a manager in public health space. They cannot. They have to start as a project officer. Why? Because like they have not been there. There are a lot of things that you need to learn. There are a lot of things that you need to do. So You can imagine where we are in a meeting discussing about health financing. That you're a medical doctor doesn't mean that you fit in. What do you know that HMOs do apart from that? You know that some people are under NHIS in the hospitals where you're working. Do you know how their premiums are being calculated? Do you know how those things trickle down? These things are very important. And these are pathways that public health gives you and helps you grow along those areas. Now, while you're asking these questions, what skill can I build this year? 2026 is around the corner. There's something I do while I was in school, and I still do it up till now. I don't stay any month without, developing myself. I must do a particular course, no matter how busy I am with things I'm doing. I started with trying to read books, trying to read a book maybe every month. I started narrowing down to like reading a book every week. I now noticed that because of work and some other things I want to develop, reading secular books was not really easy for me to do like two, three books every month. Then I started doing courses because you need those courses. A lot of our youth, even medical doctors, will say there is no job. But I kid you not, there are a lot of opportunities calling for people to take them up in public health space. As we are talking now, I can even share thousands of them. But the problem is, do we have people who have the skills to take up this work? So if you don't have the skills, means that the work does not exist for you, but it exists for someone who has the skills. So we need to develop ourselves. We need to build skills. What problems around your needs, so like around your need solution. Where while you are profiling those solutions, you are learning how to do new things. It's very important that you know all these things. So what should be your strongest takeaway from this conversation this night? First, from my own journey from medical school, as a student leader, to public health emergencies, to primary care and policy advocacy, proves just one thing for me. And I want you to learn from that. So you don't become impactful after graduation. You become impactful the moment you decide to matter. Always decide to matter. Doors may not be open for you because your dad or you came from an influential family. If you do, so be it. Congratulations, but you still need to work hard. So I don't think I wasn't a nepo baby, and that means that I needed to work hard. My story may be for another day, but I needed to work hard, and I keep working hard to get to where I am today. So it is not by maybe say my dad was there or my mom was there. They will take you to the place you want to be. That your dad and your mom are not medical doctors doesn't mean that you cannot get to the extent you want to be in medical practice. You need to work hard for yourself. So build your capacity, build your capacity, use your platform wisely to achieve things you want to achieve, and never underestimate how far your medical training can take you. I never did that because first, a lot of people, like when I was representing my school in a lot of competitions, it's something that sounds absurd, and it was quite disappointing to me when people sound that way. When they say, "Where are you coming from?" I tell them, I school at Imo State University. They'd be like, can something good come out of Nazareth? And I know for some of us, for the places where we are, things like that happen as well. When you go for competitions, you are competing with people from Witwatersrand University, South Africa, University of Cape Town, some good universities from BOTS, from ZIMS, these around Africa, and even coming down to West Africa, you are competing with people from University of Ghana, Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, and some of the first generation universities in Nigeria as well. So, and you meet them in competitions and you trash them. So the next thing is, which school are you coming from? And when you say your school, it looks like, oh, your school should not compete with them. So that is what I'm telling you. Beyond where you are schooling, beyond what you think you are doing, work hard. Your hard work can take you to where you want to be. So I would like to share this. I don't think I've shared this story with any group that I've spoken to in recent time. So last year I gave it my all. I fought like the Luftwaffe. I told myself I wanted to get to Johns Hopkins, university, the Bloomberg School of Public Health. That's the number one school of public health in the world, or maybe in the United States alone. So I phoned and I discussed. I had a conversation with some of my friends who are already in the US, and some of them, some of my mentors discouraged me. They said, "No, can I go for smaller schools? Ivy League schools is very good. They are very good schools, but it's very difficult for you to get in. The acceptance rate is very very low. So you wouldn't want to spend your time putting up applications and you're not going to be selected." I didn't let that, I didn't let that bring down my spirit and my motivation. I had to, apply then. I had to put my applications together through so fast. Sorry, I had to put my applications together using so fast. I know I've taken a lot of time, and at the end of the day, the acceptance rate for 2025-2026 dropped from 7.5 to 5.4. That means for every 100 students who applied to Johns Hopkins, they took only 5 persons, and I got in. And I did not just get in. I think I was the only one from Nigeria that got this scholarship. So that's to say a lot about what hard work and determination can do. So I didn't just get into Johns Hopkins. I got into Emory. I got into WashU. I got into SIU, and with funding. In fact, WashU gave me $50,000. So the conclusion of the story can be for another day. But the point I'm trying to make here is that as medical students, your determination, your hard work can take you places. Never allow anybody to tell you because of where you're coming from, you cannot get to where you want to be. That is very important. So make sure that you map your journey and you walk towards it. And that is the only way you can actually get to where you want to be in public health. So I see myself not just working in subnational or maybe at the national level as it is recently. I see myself working at the at the global stage. I want to see myself one day either as maybe as the African region rep or maybe as the DG of World Health Organization. I want to see myself there. I want to see myself, occupying major positions in UNICEF, not just be maybe an SBC consultant in states in Nigeria or maybe at the country office working there. I want to be at the global stage. And, nobody asks question of where you were trained or where you are coming from when you get there. But what takes you there is just all about your hard work. So for me to just stop, I think I've used over the 25 minutes that was given to me. When I was invited to come and speak to medical students, I said, it's not going to be an opportunity for me to give you slides or maybe start telling you things that bore you, but I'm going to use it as an opportunity for me to motivate you to accept public health and a lot of things we do around public health, because discovering public health early is something that is very, very important and good for medical students because it helps me. And that's the reason why the passion is always there. A lot of medical students tell you why they were still in school that, come med is very difficult, it's so boring, I don't like it. But when you see that it is beyond the theoretical things that you see most of our lecturers do for us in classroom, and you try to see the practical aspect of it and how you're going to impact your community, the society at large, is really, really going to interest you to understand that you are there, you are the gap in primary health care, you are the power of prevention over cure, you have that the power to, make sure that there is an importance of risk, communication and community trust. People around you, that engagement among communities, you drive it and make them understand how important it is for them to be who they should be and embrace healthcare the way they should. So that makes you understand that you are the key person. So one other thing that public health medicine helps you do is that it gives you opportunity, like as a medical student, like the previous speaker mentioned when he said you need to actually volunteer by helping your seniors when they are doing their research work. Public health allows you the opportunity to volunteer a lot. You need to volunteer, you need to join communities, you need to learn data, you learn research, you learn communication, you learn leadership. All of these things are things that clinical medicine may not teach you at some point at your medical career. You need to get to some level in medical practice before you get those things from clinical medicine. Maybe when you start becoming maybe say chief resident, head of department, you join the governing board or governing council before you start learning those things. But public health grows you in that area very early. So growth begins the moment you say yes to public health. And I'm trying to encourage a good number of you to say yes to public health today, because it's going to be an opportunity for you to learn a lot of things. It's going to, for some people who think they are interested to travel the world, public health is going to give you an opportunity for you to travel the world. And um, beyond the power you have around your stethoscope, um, public health is going to put you on that map where people are going to see you. So if you want to be that doctor that is going to be recognized, work hard. Public health can put you on that map, and people are going to recognize you because there are a lot of things you'll be doing that will earn you those recognitions than you being just in the clinic. Clinic is very important. We have a good number of doctors doing it already, but I'm preaching that we should have more doctors in the area of public health. So just like I said before, I've done a call to action for medical students, and I will still repeat this just to end this conversation. It's very important that we understand that in the standing committee on capacity building. I think that the committee that is handling this particular conversation this moment. It's an opportunity to build your capacity, build your skills. Team coordination is very important, and public health space teaches you that conflict management, accountability, and that is why currently there is something very important in the public health space called community engagement and accountability. It allows you to become accountable to the communities that we serve as doctors, as public health workers, and even protection against sexual exploitation and abuse. All those things are very important concepts that you learn in public health, communication and advocacy, like I mentioned before. So, doctors in the making and doctors that are in the house as well, it's very important that we understand that um, anyone who cannot communicate cannot fully heal. So we should learn how to communicate, and public health does that for us. Capacity skills around all those, risk communication, community engagement, health education are things that we need to learn, and they align so well with the scope CB alignment. Communication is a core transferable skill used in clinics, in clinical practice, and in public health and in policy and leadership. So very importantly, and in conclusion, dear friends, I would like us to understand that the system may be broken. Yeah, the system may be broken, but your compassion and creativity must not be. So I'll be leaving this with us this night. Let us be those leaders that doesn't just take leadership as a title, but responsibility in action. And by so doing, we can make Nigeria medical practice a better one for everyone by making sure that people do not get impoverished by seeking health care. And you can only achieve that as a doctor when you join public health medicine. Thank you very much. And I'll be welcoming your questions right now. Hello. I don't know if anyone can still hear me. Okay, why I wait for the moderator to return, I can see a lot of questions on the comment section. Whoa. I don't know if I'm allowed to take the questions. Do I? Should I go on to take the questions? Okay, I can see someone asking, do you offer mentorship programs, or like, do you still offer mentorship? Yeah, I do, but right now I think I've closed for the year. I have a lot of my recent work placed me in a position where I mentor a lot of people. So welcome back, Ella. Hello, Ella, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I was saying I don't know if I should continue with the questions that I can see on the comment section, or do you want to take something else?
So please come again.
So I was asking if I should take the questions that are on the comment section. Can you hear me? Hello.
I'm having really bad network disturbance. I'm
All right. Can
unable
someone
to
drop on the chat box if you can hear me?
still.
Because I can see a few comments by a few persons. So, like I was trying to take the question around mentorship. Right now, I'm closed for the year. So by next year, around February, we are planning to. We have a platform where we mentor medical students, and the last cohort, I think almost all of them are currently medical doctors now. So we bring, attendings from different countries to mentor medical students, and most of those mentorship platforms I created then are still existing. Most of the mentees are still connected to their mentors, some of them in the US, some of them in the UK, some of them here in Nigeria, and all of that. So we plan to do something again by February next year. And then personal mentorship, I think I'm close for now, but I can help. Maybe through my LinkedIn page, you can reach out if you want me to help you do anything for you. But for now, that is where I am for 2025. Maybe 2026, we can think about what to do. Yeah, that's it. And secondly, do I have any other question here? I don't think so. Okay, someone said, how did you go about setting up your NGO in school? Yeah, it was something very, very difficult to do then, but passion can take you anywhere. So I was so passionate making sure that medical outreaches gets to the hard to reach communities. I was so passionate making sure that health education is taken to the next level. That was the motivation towards finding Blast Initiative for Health Education, and it really worked. So if you need more about that, you can come for clarity section. I think it's beyond what the time I'm giving for this particular section can offer. So I am seeing something else. All right, so I think that's all the questions for now. I need to run. I need to get to my house. I've been out since morning, and it's very important I do that. Thank you very much for having me here, the Standing Committee on Capacity Building team, and your leader, Favor Agada. I am happy to always, attend to the needs of medical students anytime, any day. It is a platform that formed me. It is a platform that has a lot to say about my becoming. So I do not take an opportunity to give back for granted. So thank you, everyone. And it's a good night from here. I don't know if Ella has anything to add for me, or maybe we can be moving over to the next speaker. Thank you very much, and good night.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. All right. I am so sorry for the break in transmission. Hello, sir. Are you still here?
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, okay. I'm so sorry for the break in transmission. I had to change my location. I had to move from where I was before. The network over there just suddenly disappeared. I left my hostel before to go outside, but I had to run back inside. Yeah, which um, took a while, and I hope that I did not just keep everyone uh, waiting. But I think most people have gone. So were you able to answer some of the questions? I don't know if you could see. I don't know if you can see the questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I responded to some of them I saw. I think someone said something again. I'm just saying that one now. They said, I've always had eyes for public health, but always seem lost. Okay, just like if you follow the conversation, you find that I said it's going to be very difficult and demanding. The reason why a lot of medical doctors, shy away from public health is because it's going to be demanding and it is very vast. So when you get into the space and you see people speaking a lot of languages in public health, it can scare you. You feel like you're a medical doctor and you should know everything, and you are not picking up from where you are. Don't run, but rather start from an area that you are passionate about. That will really help you. You see a lot of medical doctors doing well around STI and HIV activities. You see a lot of doctors doing so well in area of wash. You see doctors doing well in area of data analysis. Different areas. There are a whole lot of areas, but just know where you have passion and work on yourself in that area. That's the only thing I can say about that. And trust me, the money will come.
Okay, thank you so much. Since you have answered most of the questions, in the meantime, while I was away, I think we can come to an end of the session now. I believe that this was a very, very, very impactful session. One thing that I really took from what you said was that we should always ensure that we aim high. If your dreams don't scare you, that means they are not big enough, and we should never let our background, where we're coming from, make us see ourselves small, make us think that we are not able to achieve what we want to achieve. And I must say, you getting into John Hopkins School of Public Health is an extremely great feat that I was really inspired by. Thank you so much, sir. I will say that we're really blessed to have you speak at this webinar. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ella. And it's a good night from me.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a good night, sir. Okay, so we have come to the end of the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm sure that you had an extremely great time, and I'm definitely sure that it was impactful. Tomorrow, we will continue with the USMLE and PLAB pathway for the UK and US environs. We might have the Emory pathway speaker tomorrow. Yeah, we might. So, good night, everyone. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a good night.